Amma ba'd, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to the discussion on Nahj al-Balagha. Last discussion that we had was on sermon number 27. We already gone through the first three sections of sermon number 27. The first section was about the virtues and the importance of jihad. We talked about it in that discussion. Number two was the consequences of abandoning jihad rather. This all was prior to exhorting people to come out and help in the war that Imam ﷺ was facing. And number three was the weak-spirited companions who remained even after all the exhortations that Imam had given, all the advices that Imam had given, all the virtues of war Imam had mentioned, all the consequences of not or abandoning the war Imam had mentioned, that this will happen to you if you don't go, this will happen to you if you don't go, if you go, this will happen. All that was mentioned, still there were what? These weak-spirited companions who did not want to accompany Imam. And lastly, when all that was done, and still there were many who failed to accompany Imam ﷺ, Imam speaks to them in this way: men unworthy of the title men, cowardly, lacking honor. So these are the group that abandoned, did not go, failed to go after hearing all the advices. Someone comes here and tells you how important it is, for example, for you to eat certain things and start talking about the benefits of that thing and gives you an influential speech on that. And then the next thing after you hear the hour-long speech, you go ahead and eat the nihari. And it's like there was a speech against it, and we still went ahead and ate it. There was all the discussion that how it could be harmful to you, how it could have this bad. But then, don't take it for today, but exceptionally for today. But all that is mentioned, and then the person still goes ahead and does the very first thing they do is the same thing. What are you going to do? You're going to call them what Imam ﷺ says. So Imam begins by literally calling these people, Ya ashbah al-rijal, wala rijal. O you semblances of men, not men. You resemble men. So this is the biggest knock that you can have, biggest way of turning anyone down that you can, when you speak to someone and call them that you are not worthy of this title, being called men. Hulum al-atfal wa uqul rabbat al-hijal. Your intelligence is that of children, and your wit is that of the occupants of the curtain canopies. Of course, this is where the ishara is toward the women kept in seclusion, away from the outside world, where they're not allowed to see anyone. لَوَدَدْتُ أَنِّي لَمْ أَرَكُمْ وَلَمْ أَعْرِفْكُمْ مَعْرِفَةً. He said, I wish I had not seen you or known you. Sometimes you come across people and you say, well, I wish we had never become friends. With all that is being now revealed unto me, I wish this encounter had never happened. And then he says, by Allah, this acquaintance has brought about shame and resulted in repentance. So very quickly we'll go through some of the, so this is the second part of it. That Imam ﷺ, here you got to understand, when you are with someone for quite some time, they become family to you. They become closer than relatives to you, right? Sometimes your relatives aren't as close as those who are your neighbors. Over here in America, maybe concept of neighborhood is not as, projected. But back home, those who live right next door to you, of course, if they were sharing the same madhab as you, they were primarily Muslims, but if they were Shia as well, then there was this relationship that you had with them. And I'm sure many of you still have those friends from your neighborhood for the past 40, 50 years. Still, you're in touch with them. They become closer than your relatives sometimes because you see them all the time. You're with them all the time. You share these household items with them all the time. Borrowing things, lending things, all that used to happen. That build that intimate bond between you, which is more than sometimes your blood relatives. So Imam has spent a lot of time with these people as the leader of these people. Yet he sees these people have really torn Imam's heart. He's speaking out of his emotions and letting it all out, making him understand that what kind of relationship you and I had. And when you stab me on the back like this is where you have really torn my heart. So in this final sermon, Imam continues to lash their souls with the whip of blame and rebuke. Not literally with the whip, but with the blame and with the rebuke, with the reproaching them, with calling on them. One after another, perhaps these weak-willed, drowsy individuals might awaken. So what was the purpose behind it? Why Imam is being so harsh to them? Why Imam is calling them men who are not worthy of the title of men? Does Imam just want to go ahead and humiliate them, disgrace them? Imam wants to just go ahead and make them look bad? Is that what the reason is? No. Reason is Imam wants them to come out and awaken from the heedlessness, open their eyes, realize the deadly condition they are trapped in. Perhaps they might rise and with a manly and God-pleasing jihad, which is upon them, cut off the heads and the hands of the plundering forces of Sham from the Islamic lands. So here the plundering forces of Sham are who? Muawiyah and his army. They are challenging. Yet what's going on? Imam's people are disgraced. They're not. These are the places where I've mentioned a few times, you might remember, that in other places in Nahj will come across those places as well, where Imam actually says, I will trade 10 of mine with one of theirs. I will trade 10 of my companions with one of Muawiyah's companions. It's a big claim. And it's like, why? He said, because these 10 know that I am Amirul Mu'mineen. They've heard the hadith that Aliyun ma'al haq, wal haqu ma'ali. Yet they still abandon me. They're still not loyal to me. And Muawiyah's companions know that he's not on haq, he's on batil. He's cunning. What he's doing is falsehood, standing up against me. Yet they're still loyal to him. See the loyalty? How he got their loyalty? He said, I'm ready to change 10 of mine with one of theirs. So in the opening section, Imam says what? Addresses them by 3 crushing phrases. O those who resemble men but are not truly men. Number 2, your hopes are like the hopes of children. You know, chote bache, when they're making these hopes, I wish I had this, I wish I can do this. Those hopes which are not going to come true because of their young age. Who are deceived by the trivial things, content with them and blind to danger. And number 3, ukulu rabbat al-hijal. Your intellects are like those of pampered brides sitting in their chambers, who think of nothing beyond luxury and decoration. You know, a bride, not a knock on a bride, but we've had a lot of weddings. And when a bride is getting married, you know, she's decorated and, you know, with all the adornment that is done on brides. That's the reason they're called bride, right? You're dressed up like a bride, you know, you're decorated like a bride. They're worried about the minor details of if my makeup is right, if my jewelry is correct, if my libas is perfect. These are the worries of a bride right now. Nothing else is on the mind. Wants to look perfect for this event. So in this first description, Imam criticizes them of lacking courage, zeal, and manly honor. Because you're physically man, but you don't possess those manly qualities that a man should have. Then adopting a sharper tone, Imam states, I wish I had never seen you or known you before. Such a knowing that by Allah brought nothing but regret and grief. That again is something which is a no. Lawadattu is number 4. If you look at it, number 4, that's where Imam says, Lawadattu anni lam arakum. The history bears witness to the fact that so-called affection of the people of Kufa and Iraq brought nothing to the Imam. Throughout his 4 years, except what? Sorrow and anguish. These 4 years, Imam wasn't enjoying with the people of Kufa. He made Kufa to be his capital. But the people of Kufa, they remain the same people who betrayed Imam Ali now, then he'll betray Imam Hassan next, then they'll betray Imam Hussein after him. The same people of Kufa. Why? Due to their weakness, their betrayal, broken promises, disunity, and various manifestations of munafiqat and hypocrisy that exist in them. This group created tremendous difficulties for the leadership and management of this insightful and capable Imam. We just only hope. Then the final Imam comes. He too will declare Kufa to be his capital. There's a reason behind it. Those of you who have gone for ziyarat, you go to Kufa. There's Masjid-e-Kufa there. Just a quick background of it. Why Kufa is chosen as, in that time, now you understand, but back then, in the time of Imam Ali, why would he choose Kufa to be his capital? Why leave Medina? 1,000, I don't know if it's 1,000 miles, close to 1,000 miles between Kufa and Medina, if not more. Imam leaves that and comes to Kufa. Why? Because Kufa was a place where they had, it's a booming city where they had technology, advancement in war and, weaponry. There were industries over there. They were advancing in technology of that time. There were many nations that lived in. In Hijaz, only Muslims lived, and some Christians and Jews who were primarily kicked out of the city. But in Kufa, you had the Turks, you had the Byzantine, you had the Romans, you had the Persians, you had Arabs, you had all these different nations that lived together. They spoke different languages, and they had all these technological advancements. So Imam took his capital over there. Last Imam will do the same exact thing. So it's only natural then that Imam would wish he had never laid eyes on such people, nor he had even gathered around them. Firstly, Imam speaks in this way, and then finally he turns the arrow of his curse towards them and declares, "May Allah destroy you. May Allah annihilate you, remove you from His mercy and afflict you with curse." But nothing worse. Imam is now what doing? He's sending la'anat upon them. Finally, he sends la'anat upon them. Why? He says, "Qatalakumullah. Laqad mala'atum qalbi qayhan wa shahantum sadri ghayzan." And then, he speaks by saying, "You have filled my heart with blood, saturated my chest with fury, made me drink bowl after bowl of sorrow and grief through your disobedience and failure to support me and to ruin my plans." And all that, Imam is literally bringing all of his anguish out. And then he says, "Do you think فَأَفَسْتُمْ عَلَيَّ رَأِي بِلِسَانِ حَتَّى لَقَدْ قَالَتْ." This is on top of it. He said, "You made me drink this bowl after bowl of fury and all this anguish. Now what comes down to, you're actually saying son of Abi Talib might be a good warrior, but he's not a good politician." These were the claims of the people of Kufa. They're saying what? They're saying, "Hatta laqad qalat Quraysh, inna ibn Abi Talib rajulun shuja'un, walakin la ilma lahu bil harb." That son of Abu Talib is a brave man, but he has no knowledge of war. He has no knowledge of war. And many of the Ahl Sunnah, they possess the same, mindset even today. Yeah, still there. Because this was a rumor that was spread by, Gharib Sham, not Amir Sham. Muawiyah spread this rumor. Look at Ali's siyasat. He's not a good politician. Whereas they compared the siyasat of Muawiyah, it was top notch. The reason he was so successful because of his siyasat, his politics. What was that politics? It was dirty politics. That's what it was. You want to call dirty politics to be success? Sure, go right ahead. You want, the siyasat of Rasulullah to be too polite? You go right ahead. Imam Ali was following the siyasat of Rasulullah. That's why he did not take the khilafat at the third step. He could have easily taken it with the condition of Shaykhain. He stepped off. He said, no, I'll only follow Quran and Sunnah. But the one who said, no, I'll follow Shaykhain as well, what it leads to, what you saw. Imam is being now declared. These are his own words. He says what? You don't see the Arabic on it. He says, Inna ibn Abi Talib rajulun shuja. You, Quraysh, you're the one who's saying that son of Abu Talib is a brave man, but he has no idea about how to win a war, how to fight in a battlefield. Many nations often attribute their setbacks and difficulties to the weaknesses of their leaders. They say, well, we didn't have a good leader. The reason we lost is because of our leadership. The reason we are doomed is because of our leadership. You hear the similar sentiment today as well, right? The Muslim Ummah is drowning. Why? Because of the leadership that we have, or the lack of leadership that we have. All these Muslim countries, there isn't really. In fact, this last portion of the sermon fits perfectly. You can say, Yash Bahar Rajul. Oh, men who resemble men but are really not men. And this goes perfectly on today's leaders of the world, Muslim world especially. With what's happening in Gaza, yet they all sit and watch. They let Israel do whatever genocide that it's continued to commit. They don't say anything. Or they say something, but it's not something which will going to go ahead and make any impact. It's not going to go ahead and cause, any heads won't be turning. They're just going to continue on doing what they're doing. All, the international court or this country or that country can raise their voices, but the Muslim Ummah is quiet. But a lot of time what happens, you go ahead and you see that often nations attribute their setbacks and their downfall to their leaders. However, sometimes the situation is quite the opposite. The leader may be highly competent, yet the followers who suffer from weakness, indecision, and intellectual or cultural backwardness, they are the ones who are the reason why Imam Ali was not able to go ahead and succeed in many of these things. All these wars in 4 years' time, and then eventually, you understand Safin and Jamal, those were political wars. But Nahrawan had nothing to do with politics. This was a group which started considering Imam Ali was not fit for the office. People of Nahrawan, the Khawarij, they started thinking that Imam Ali is what? He is, na'udhu billah, has left the path of Islam. That's what their mindset was. So this reality is profoundly painful for a capable and a visionary leader. That is Imam Ali, who sees that I'm more than capable. He mentions it actually later on. To be surrounded by people who lack determination, resilience, leading to negative outcomes. Despite this, the public may misjudge the situation and wrongly place the blame on the shoulders of great leaders who could be greater than Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wassalam. Last 2 points. At the end of the sermon, Imam turns to respond to the false and inappropriate remarks made by the group of Quraysh, who accused him of ignorance in the art of warfare. Imam says what? Lillahi abuhum wa hal ahadun minhum ashaddu laha mirasan wa aqdamu fiha maqaman minni. Is there anyone among them more seasoned in warfare than I am? Or more experienced in standing firm on the battlefield than I am? Have you not read the history? In fact, you were there. Battle of Badr is an example. Oh, look at my resume. Badr is there. Uhud is there. Khaybar is there. Khandak is there. All of these battles are there. That's my resume. You think I'm not aware of the art of the warfare? He said, لَقَدْ نَهَسْتُ فِيهَا وَمَا بَلَغْتُ الْعِشْرِينَ. And then he continues. He said, I had already taken up arms. Imam, this hurt him really bad, so look at the word that's coming out. He said, I had already taken up arms for battle before I had even reached the age of 20. You calling me that I don't know how to fight? I had bore arms when I was not even 20 years old, and now here I am past the age of 60. Imam is, towards the end of his life now. In the battle of Safin and Jabal and Nahrawan, Imam is beyond 60. Yet what can one do? The one whose commands are not obeyed, he has no say, no strategy that can succeed. So it's not because of my lack of warfare and my inability and my incompetence. It is you that you have brought this upon yourself. So here, there are two questions that I have posed at the end. Number one, some of the commentators, Nahj al-Balagha, pose this question. They say, is it correct to adopt such a confrontational political tone towards the people and rebuke them with such intensity and sharpness? Would this not cause the speaker of such words to remain isolated, alienated among his own followers? If I was to come as let's say, the imam of this masjid and come and one Jum'ah, I just lash out at the people. You people who resemble men, but you're not really men, and say things, what will happen? So we don't have to listen to this. You'll get up and you'll leave. So we don't need to listen to this. What have we done? So is it okay for a leader to go ahead and lash out in such a fashion? Of course, I'm not comparing myself to Imam alayhi salatu wasalam. He's in a different position, but I'm just giving example for taqarrub dhihni. What the people thinking that are listening to Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, we don't need to listen to this, they'll get up and leave. Or even if they sit and listen to Imam, consequences, when they feel degraded with these words, with these sharp words, wouldn't they go ahead and isolate Imam, alienate him? So if we add this to this question, the fact that Imam ﷺ, by the testimony of his own words and actions, was a mountain of patience and endurance. Imam ﷺ possessed sabr that you and I cannot even imagine, beyond our comprehension. The sabr of Imam. These words are coming when sabr of Imam ﷺ has left. Just imagine what he had saw. That he had to go to this extent where sabr was gone now. From the person who's such at the highest place of sabr, such as Imam ﷺ. The endurance that he saw after the wafat of Rasulullah, not bearing arms, letting them throw, the door down, burning the house, putting rope in his neck, dragging him out of the house. That requires sabr, endurance. He displayed all that. 25 years of sabr that he did in the time of the first khulafa. 25 years, not just for 25 days. He said, well, just wait for 20 weeks, 25 weeks. Okay, sure, 25 weeks, I'll wait. 25 years, Imam remained silent. That's sabr. That's not sitting idly, that's displaying immense sabr. So Imam, who's the fountain of affection and the mountain of sabr, then how could he be content to speak to the people in such a manner? The objection becomes broader and deeper. But as previously mentioned in the beginning of this khutbah, this style of speech is in fact the final resort. You saw section 1, section 2, section 3 of this khutbah, right? Those of you who are here. First 3 sections was what? Exhorting them. Telling them about jihad, importance of jihad, advices about it, negligence, what that will lead to, explained all of that stuff. And then Imam comes to this final resort. So it's not like Imam jumped to this right away. Stir the feelings and move the slothful, weak, and the indifferent. This is precisely what is meant by the common phrase, one must provoke his sense of honor. You got to go ahead and when you want to get someone to do something, you got to provoke their honor, their integrity, the fact that they have this honor in them, that they are someone or something. You got to provoke that in order to make them do something. बगैर उसके वो लोग कुछ करेंगे नहीं. हिलाना पड़ेगा, shake करना पड़ेगा. So therefore, the use of the style is entirely in line with the principle of eloquence, balaghat. That's why it's part of Nahj al-Balagha, which dictates that language should be suited to the situation. And it also must not be forgotten that Imam only employed this method after using approaches such as encouragement, praise, reminders of the spiritual and the material value of jihad fi sabilillah. All that was already done. This is the final resort. So as for those commentators who have said such language was used because Imam never felt a sense of superiority, from being surrounded by a crowd, nor loneliness from the depression. This view seems very unlikely. No, Imam is not saying all of this stuff because of this reason. Imam genuinely wants to provoke these people to get ready, because if they don't, harrid al-mu'mineen ila al-jihad. Quran says that as well to Rasulullah. Oh Rasulullah, get these people. We've been discussing Surah Tawbah in our Tuesday nights. A similar discussion of ayat that we are discussing right now, 42, 43, 44, where Rasulullah is encouraging people to go to Tabuk with them. But many people were what? Bringing about excuses. Another question that comes about in the above sermon, last part, Imam said, Nahastu fiha wa ma balaghtu al-ishrin. I engaged in the art of war at a time when I had not reached the age, 20 years of age. So this raises a historical question that Ali was at least 23 years old at the time of Hijrah. At the time of Hijrah, Imam Ali is 23 years old. When does the first battle happen? 2 years after the Hijrah, Battle of Badr. So Imam is what? 25. Simple math. How this statement be reconciled with the historical fact that Imam ﷺ was 25, yet he's saying in this khutbah that I had, the sword in my hand when I had reached the age of 20. Is it just figure of speech? Or Imam is misquoting something, na'udhu billah? Or what is it? How do you reconcile between it? This is a question. This is how people study Nahj al-Balagha. Especially the enemies. Especially those who are not followers of Imam. This is how they study Nahj al-Balagha. They look at these things and they tear it apart. Those people who have started giving lectures against the khutbahs of Nahj al-Balagha, saying this is not the words of Ali that we have come to know of. Look, these are historical errors in it. Syed Rizvi concocted this book by himself. This is not true. These are the ishkalat that they bring about. Look, historically speaking, this is wrong. Imam said, I was not even 20, yet the first battle happens when Imam is well over 20. He's 25 years old. So the answer is, it is true that the official battles began after Hijrat. But the final years of Prophet's stay in Mecca, were they without any persecution? Were they going very easily? The last 3 years they spent in Shabi Abi Talib. Prior to that, all the persecution that was happening was accompanied by fierce confrontations and severe clashes that were not much less than the actual warfare. The Imam had to bear arms inside Mecca when all that was happening. Sometime to rescue Rasulullah, sometime to ward off these people. And then, of course, when they were in Shabi Abi Talib. So one prominent example of the siege of the Prophet's house by the sword-wielding men of Quraysh on Laylatul Mabit. You think they came bearing praises and flowers in their hands on the night of Hijrat to the house of Rasulullah? No, they came with swords. So Imam ﷺ had a sword in his hand to defend himself. So Imam ﷺ, on this Laylatul Mabit, when Ali, with astonishing self-sacrifice, threw himself into the heart of danger and saved the life of Rasulullah. Some historical facts, sources report that even before that, enemies had plotted to assassinate Rasulullah, and Abu Talib was deeply concerned about this. So, father of Imam Ali is continuously protecting. Allah Majlisi narrates that when Prophet would leave his house in Mecca, the children of the mushrikeen would pelt stones at him, to the point that they would wound his body, and Ali, in defense of the Prophet, would attack them and they would flee. So Imam would bring out his sword. So he said, well, it may not be in battlefield, but it is battle-like scenario over here that we are facing. So Imam, when he says, I rose up in it before I had reached 20, found in this above sermon, is actually referring to the preparedness of war and not the official commencement of the battlefield. So this is one way of reconciling what Imam ﷺ says, that I had not reached the age of 20 when I had started warfare, and you are now. But you're deviating from the path. Imam is saying this to go ahead and clear his name by saying that you think Ali does not know how to fight. I've been fighting since I was 20 years old. This is how you give examples. But of course, there's no exaggeration in what Imam said. It was completely in line with the historical facts. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and ability to understand the pain of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the examples that he gives in this khutbah particularly, and how these could be implemented to us in today's world. Wa akhu da'wana, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.